I think that's one of the things that I'm so thankful for your writing and my time with you at Northern is uh, the. I think I came to Northern in a similar spot, feeling discontent about the mold that existed for modern ministry, having done the traditional track. Like I didn't do an MDiv, but I did an MA. Spent some time in the church, felt disconnected about what it was supposed to be, and then taking your class and some other classes at Northern and experiencing a deconstruction of that normal. Here's the system that we think about. Here's the model that we think about, and here's where that comes from. I think was consistently one of the most helpful events, and I think the last like 5 years for me in my own ministry understanding. And I think it leads to maybe another question, which is, like, I want to keep, maybe jumping back and forth between your biography and some of the things you think about and talk about. But I think it's helpful to say, like, the church has not always been that way, or the model that we have of ministry has not always been this round peg that we all have to be forced into. You talk a lot about what shapes us, what forces us into that model, and how that's now unraveling today. You use both those metaphors, unraveling, liminal. I know this is a big question, but could you maybe help us get a sense of how we got to where we are?
Well, that is a big question. And it's not a straight line, and it has multiple shades of many colors. So how did we get to where we are that's a toughie. I mean, I could talk about it, but we need all day. Having said that, I think that it's best to approach this by telling a little bit of a story about one of my favorite people. Her name is Simone Weil. She was a young Jewish woman who became what you'd call a Christian mystic, never quite became a Catholic Christian, who lived in the early part of the 20th century. And so she would have the same period of time as people like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir and all of those what we would call existentialists and phenomenologists. My point is that in that first part of the 20th century, which goes to the question, what happened? Where are we? There was something going on deep in the imagination of the European and North American mind that was shaping it. And one of the ways of approaching that is to say the early part of the 20th century was a great big battle around ideologies. And you see those ideologies getting worked out in, the First World War, in the Communist Revolution, in fascism, and in the fight over capitalism, that shape it would take. So you could name all these ideologies. And that's how people were lining up and ordering themselves and trying to understand their place in the world. Where do you belong in these ideologies, right? And Simone Weil says it's none of those ideologies that are shaping the modern West. It's something profoundly different than democracy or communism, fascism or national socialism, on and on we could go. And then you begin to ask the question, well, how did Simone Weil begin to ask a different question? Well, part of it was, and there's no way of explaining this, I can't give you a rationale, God was strangely at work in this young girl's life, this young woman's life. She went to the École in Paris and graduated top of her class in philosophy, ahead of Simone de Beauvoir, which was very upsetting for Simone de Beauvoir. And she had a position teaching philosophy in Paris, but you know what she did? She did that, but she went to live with ordinary people and literally live with them. And so she was rooted in the sort of the working class neighborhoods around the Renault factory at the edge of Paris. She went to work for periods of time on fishing boats. She went and became a coal miner just as the pneumatic drill was being invented. Now, my point being is that she moved into the neighborhood, if you will, but from a bottom-up kind of way. And she watched and experienced, was part of the life of ordinary people. And what became the critical piece for her was the pneumatic drill. You know what I mean by a pneumatic drill? It's a big machine that you see people on sidewalks using when they want to break open, okay, or you hold and you pull it coal veins, okay. So she was using these with others, and her question was, these were in their initial description, the developments, very destructive machines to the body and to people. And so she was asking, does the ideology of democracy or fascism or communism or whatever, does that ideology make any difference for the way those regimes actually treat the coal miner? And she said, no, not one bit of difference. Therefore, there's something else going on. And what she said was, it's a long way to get to this, that the fundamental narrative shaping the modern West in the early part of the 19th century and on is what she called technocratic rationality, which is really captured in somebody my age in that TV series called The Bionic Man, which begins with the caption, "We have the technology, we can fix it." And Simon Veil says that's the underlying narrative, technique. And technique is all about the power of human agency. And when you have technocratic rationality, you simply don't need God. That's not a narrative. You may need God when you initiate a program in the church and you pray that God will bless it, but that's not really what's going on. So when you ask the question, what is it that's shaping the Western imagination? It has been this technocratic rationality. And I would argue that almost all of the training and the formation of clergy in the professionalization of their lives has been in technocratic rationality. And this deep sense of we have the power, we can control, we can predict, we can pick up a study and we can look at these studies, and out of it we can name trends, and out of those trends we can name what's going to happen. We can read some sociological studies and we can look at the U-curve and we can locate people on the U-curve, and out of that location we can make decisions about how to, you get what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that is the ethos in which we have been formed and trained. And part of what's happening is that narrative is coming apart. That technocratic rationality no longer has the capacity to actually engage the unraveling that's going on in our culture and our society. And so we are entering broadly, but particularly in the amongst clergy, a profound space of anxiety. And of course, the way in which clergy deal with their anxiety is they go get more education, which is why D-Mins used to get filled up. I mean, people are getting skeptical of that now. Anyway, let me stop. That's just one quick snapshot of response.